Top of the morning, Dan and Amy, and got a little abbreviated Campus Beat segment here because we're going to speak with George Mason University professor Walter Williams. But Amy, the University of Wisconsin at Stevens Point, they're proposing to eliminate 13 majors, including English, philosophy, history, and Spanish.
Well, then what's going to be left?
They're looking to replace English, for example.
With women's studies?
No. Well, I'm sure they have those.
And its effect on modern society.
They wouldn't dare replace that. Instead, focus on programs that have clear career pathways, marketing, management, graphic design, computer information systems that have demonstrated value and demand in the region.
Okay.
No, not okay. Not okay. You don't eliminate English, philosophy, history in favor of these kind of hard skills majors, if you will. Although marketing and management, I wouldn't say are hard skills, but the idea of marketable, like college is just their pathway to get a job. No. And you don't have to sacrifice one to provide the other. It's a false choice that's being presented at Stevens Point. And I wonder what is bubbling below the surface in terms of other majors that are academically suspect, intellectually vacuous, but are too politically charged to dump into the ash bin. Holy Cross in Worcester, Mass. Holy Cross. They're going to keep the Crusaders' name. Oh, swell.
That's nice.
But they're going to dump the knight as its mascot. In a letter to alumni,
Like a symbol or something.
Well, yeah,
of the big C or something
of the Crusades, yeah. And in a letter to alumni, the Reverend Burroughs said the Crusader Knight, which adorns much of the college's paraphernalia, inevitably ties us directly to the reality of the religious wars and the violence of the Crusaders. The imagery stands in contrast to our values. I don't think you understand what the Crusades were, Reverend Burroughs. So there's that. Penn Law School, our friend Amy Wax, who's the law professor there, under fire. We've talked to a number of times. Campus mob is winning at University of Pennsylvania Law School. Professor Wax will no longer be allowed to teach required first-year courses, according to the school's dean. And now the leader of Black Lives Matter Pennsylvania wants Miss Wax's scalp. If she isn't fired within the week, said the leader of Black Lives Matter PA, he plans to make things on the West Philadelphia campus very uncomfortable, he said. The thuggish culture of the left and identity politics more generally. For more on all of these topics, we're pleased to be joined by an accomplished academic in his own right. He is longtime economics professor at George Mason University and nationally syndicated columnist Walter Williams. Professor Williams, thanks for joining us again. Appreciate it.
Hey, good morning.
So things on college campuses, we're told that these what people talk about, people like me talk about, are one-off examples, that there's no kind of cultural orthodoxy that is being imposed on college campuses, that we have isolated incidents, and the vast majority of university campuses are fine. They are still places of intellectual freedom. They are still places that are robust academically. Which is true?
Well, I think that that many college campuses are going down the tubes in terms of their academic credibility. And I heard you talking about schools getting rid of English and history, and where they actually should get rid of any course that has the name studies on it, whether it's African American studies,
women's studies,
or gender studies, and then also what a lot of Americans do not realize, that I would guess about 50% of the students who are in college do not belong there. And the reason why I say 50% is that nationally, close to 50% of all incoming freshmen to colleges require remedial English, remedial math, and remedial writing. So that says the fact that freshmen require these remedial courses, that says that the high school diploma that they received was fraudulent. That is, when a kid graduates from high school, he's expected to be able to read, write, and compute at 12th grade level, and most of the times, or many times, he's unable to do that. And for black kids, it's even worse. It turns out that according to statistics over the years by Abigail Thernstrom, and others, the average black kid who has a high school diploma in hand, he can read and write and compute at the level of a seventh or eighth eighth grade white student, and which is showing that black kids are getting even more grossly fraudulent education than our white kids.
So you feel that 30%, how many percentage of college students shouldn't be in college?
No, I'm saying I'm close to 50%.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, it's interesting because if what we're talking about is not systemic, you're talking about kids not being prepared for college and then the totalitarian re-education that goes on so many college campuses. If this wasn't happening across the country in a substantial way, then I don't think you'd have reactions like this intellectual dark web project that was launched recently by Claire Lehman, who's the founder and editor of Quillette, a bioethicist named Alice Dreger, and Brett Weinstein, among others. Brett Weinstein, of course, famously targeted for elimination at Evergreen State in Washington State because he wouldn't go along with the national the No White People Day on campus. So you do have some academics, even across the political spectrum, reacting to what's happening on college campuses, but it doesn't seem like we've got enough to push back the onslaught of the cultural Marxists at this point.
No. College administrators, that is, college presidents, their job, as they see their job, as keeping keeping everybody happy on college campuses. So they will pay attention to the barrel that's making the most noise. That is, they would not dare to get rid of the African American Studies Department, even though there are no jobs in African American Studies. You can't go to Sears or Kmart or a finance company and say, hey, I have a degree in African American Studies or Women's Studies. What can I do for your firm? Well, the average employer will say, yes, I know what you can do for my firm. You can cause me a lot of trouble and a lot of grief.
Yeah, but some students go to college for the social aspects of it and just to get out of the house.
Sure, for your vacation.
To have life experience and to learn how to live on their own. I mean, that was an important part of my college life. Was that an important part of yours, Mr. Williams?
Well, I was a grown-up when I went to college.
Oh.
Matter of fact, if I had gone to college right after high school, it would have been an unmitigated disaster because I was just immature and I was not ready for college. And I started going to college after I got out of the Army. I was married and I was 25 years old, and I went to school 11 consecutive years, including the summers.
Wow. Yeah.
Did you take women's studies
I was
class?
mature.
You were motivated, right? You had you had responsibilities you had to abide, right?
Oh, that's absolutely right. I was mature and motivated. And a number of kids, I know a lot of parents feel so proud they're being admitted to college, but maybe for a number of kids, the best thing that could happen to them after high school is to get a job at McDonald's or a car wash and gain some maturity, and then maybe later on go to college, because there are many kids that they are so immature that they don't belong in college when they're 17 or 18 or 19 years old.
There's a piece by Crispin Sartwell, who's a philosophy professor at Dickinson College, in the Wall Street Journal yesterday. He's written a bunch on this topic of identity politics by, I guess, this philosophy. He's a professor of philosophy at Dickinson College so long as philosophy is still offered. We'll see. But he talks about the dead end of identity politics, and he puts it in the parlance of this intersection, or he distills it through kind of the view of intersectionality, this idea that both political parties are targeting people based on identity, right? It's, Republicans more inclined to target white men or white working class men, and Hillary Clinton made a big show, we're going to target women and minorities. And Sartwell, of course, points out, well, okay, so where does that leave the working class white gay man? Or, these people that don't fit neatly into the boxes that political parties want to fit them in, that this is the reason identity politics is a dead end, and it's driven by the ethical failure of the political parties in this country. Do you agree with that?
And yes, and I think that identity politics raises the potential for ethnic or racial conflict. I think one of the great things about our country is that throughout most of our history, people in our country who have been fighting each other for centuries in Europe, in the home country, they were able to come here and live in peace. That is, we have almost every racial group around the world. We have almost every religious group around the world. And historically, we've been able to live in peace with one another. And I believe that one of the reasons is that government played such a small part in our lives that it did not pay to be an Irishman. It did not pay to be a Jew. It did not pay to be a Chinese. But now, with identity politics is coming on, it does pay to be a woman. It does pay to be a black. It does pay to be a homosexual. So I think that what identity politics does, it raises the potential for conflict between people.
Well, speaking of government involvement, I don't know if you're aware of this, but starting in 2020 in Chicago Public Schools, you cannot receive your high school diploma unless you prove that you're going to college, have a job, or joining the military. That's what our great mayor, Rahm Emanuel, and I say that tongue-in-cheek, has implemented on us parents.
No matter how unprepared you are for any of those
I mean,
things.
Isn't it unbelievable? Yeah. I mean, honestly, if my kids give 4 years, which they will, and trust me, they'll get good grades and they'll have strong attendance marks. But for the government, the city to come in and say that I'm not going to give him a diploma if he decides to take, a year off? That's what Melania Obama did, and that was okay.
Yeah, right. Well, what can you say? I mean, the mayor of Chicago, he's such a loser in terms of maintaining the city financially, dealing with the crime and the drugs and everything in the city. So he has to say something.
Yeah. It's just none of his business to tell me or my kids what they have to do in order to, if they do the time and go to school for 4 years and get the grades, they should just get the diploma.
So this is a version of the identity politics, right? This is Rahm Emanuel, Professor Williams, doing his virtue signaling about how much he cares about the minority families that are stuck in these shooting gallery neighborhoods, that are stuck without jobs, that are stuck without access to quality schools. Mm-hmm. But he's going to demand their success. He's going to issue an edict saying they're going to be successful without providing any of the infrastructure that provides pathways to success. But virtue signaling is enough to get votes, and that's all they care about.
And that sells. Politically, it sells. It sounds good, and a lot of people give a lot of stock to something that sounds good, that sounds caring.
There's no question about that. My term for that is sophisticated barbarians. You feel free to borrow it if you want, if with your colleagues. Okay. He is Walter Williams. He is a renowned professor of economics at George Mason University. He's a nationally syndicated columnist. You always want to pay attention to what Professor Williams has to say. Professor Williams, thanks as always for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thank you for inviting me.
And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
The more you